All right, to draw a value scale, we're going to draw a rectangle first. Okay, then we're going to create 5 sections. So we're going to create 4 vertical lines inside our rectangle. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They're a little uneven. It's okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to go ahead and label these so that we know what value is supposed to be where. And we're going to stick to kind of 1 being the highlight and 5 being the shadows. So 5 is going to be our darkest, 1 is going to be our lightest. So we can also label those. So highlights are going to be our 1 and 2s. 3 can be our midtone since it's in the middle. 4 and 5 will be our shadows. Okay, and then our value scale is going to go from light to dark. Okay, so there are a few ways that we can do this. But one way that I'm going to show and kind of explain is how to actually create that with your pencil, that range from light to dark. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the hatching technique. And then I'll show you the rest of them too, but I'll probably just do like a time lapse so that you can kind of see them. The same kind of method will apply to each value technique. So I'm just going to go through hatching first, and then the rest of them will be in kind of like a time speed or time lapse. So you can just kind of see them pretty quickly, and then on YouTube you can slow them down if you need to kind of pay attention to any other details. All right, so I already went ahead and shaded in this value scale so that we have something to kind of reference as we're working on our hatching value scale. So hatching is creating parallel lines all in the same direction. So that can be, you know, this way, this way, this way, or this way. It doesn't really matter. This is just the kind of technique that we're going to use in order to create our value scale for hatching. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these directions and I'm going to start filling in each box, and as I continue towards 1, I'm going to loosen my pressure and not add as many layers on top of one another to make it appear as if it's lighter. Okay, you can also think of the value scales as maybe like a like an airplane taking off. So your pencil is the airplane and the scale is the runway. And so, you know, as we're the airplane's kind of like coming down the runway, we're like right on the ground. And we don't jump, right? So we're not like an airplane. We don't just go whoop and we're just in the air. We have to gradually get there. So I want you to kind of think about that as you're moving your pencil across the value scale, that our pencil is lifting up off the page, okay? So I'm going to be starting with 5. I'm going to start darker and move to lighter. Obviously, if this is easier for you to go lighter to darker, then you can do that. There is really no right or wrong way, as long as there's just a soft transition from 1 to 5 or 5 to 1, and as long as 5 is the darkest and 1 is the lightest. And we're keeping the numbers the same and consistent only because when I help you to kind of reference what values maybe that you're missing in your value scale, I might just refer to the number. Not everyone does this or teaches this way, but I use this 1 through 5 value scale. You know, more advanced college might use a 1 through 10 kind of value scale. So it's a little bit different, but this is kind of how we're going to use it and reference kind of where we are within our values, okay? So, all right, so I'm going to start with hatching. And you'll notice I'm just doing quick hatching marks vertically up and down, and I'm going back and forth over this to create that nice dark shadow for 5. Okay, you can see it's pretty close to this one. All right, so now I'm going to loosen my pressure. I'm also not going to create as many layers to create this lighter shadow for number 4, okay? You also want to be really careful with your pressure, because sometimes if we press too hard, it will make our paper really shiny and it will start to indent into our paper. And then if we ever have to erase, it becomes a really big problem. So creating layers and being really careful about how much pressure you're actually applying is really important when you're creating value. And as we start to go down, some more paper will show through, and that's okay too, because that kind of gives us the illusion or the idea that yes, this is getting lighter by the separation of the hatching lines themselves. Okay, and then one we just leave. Okay, so I have most of my value scales completed except for smudging. I'm actually going to get to that one in just a second. So nobody actually says either that you have to do one and only one most of the time, unless somebody's requiring that of you, but you can add all of these techniques into one drawing. A lot of times I do cross-hatching and then I will actually smudge the cross-hatching, so I'll end up combining these two. I also really enjoy doing loose line when I'm shading as well. So you can kind of like add them all together. Certain things also, like certain techniques, are really great to create textures. So if you are creating some sort of still life or drawing something that has a lot of texture in it, you know, you might want to use these type of techniques to also convey that texture even more. So it kind of depends your style and what you like and what you're drawing. All right, so when you're doing smudging, you can smudge with multiple of things. You can smudge with your fingers, you can smudge with Q-tips, cotton balls, paper towels, tissue papers, another sheet of scrap paper. Whatever it is that works for you is totally fine. The best smudging though happens with either the artist pencils or a number 2 pencil. Mechanical pencils really do not work well for this. Something about the lead, it just doesn't smudge as well. So I highly recommend just using a number 2 pencil. All right, so 2 little tips. I like to hold my pencil kind of at the end. It helps to stop me from applying too hard of a pressure when I'm creating value. If I'm too close, sometimes I can get really, really hard with my pressure, but if I kind of loosen my grip and kind of hold it at the top, it helps to stop me from that and helping my control with that, so that I get a soft transition from dark to light without actually indenting the paper. Another great tip, which I love, is to actually use the edge of your pencil when creating value, because what happens is it like softens it, and it also kind of creates like a little value scale as I'm shading, and it really helps to like blend each one together in a really, really nice transition. So I'm actually going to kind of flip this over to kind of work with my hand, but I am going to do the edge of my pencil and you'll see what I'm talking about. So instead of the point of the pencil, I'm not indenting the paper as much as I would be if I was using that tip. I'm kind of just moving my pencil in a nice circular motion. And I'm just loosening my pressure as I move into each value scale box. But you can tell here that it just already has such a nice transition from that dark to like that second dark shadow, which transition or blend, or you can even call it like a gradient, or even like an ombre for us that have like that in our hair sometimes, that dark to light. That's kind of what we're looking for, that really soft transition so that it doesn't jump from one to the next. You know, we really don't want something like, I'm just going to draw a little thing here, but we really don't want this when we're creating value unless we have a really high contrast image. We don't normally see this in a lot of value. Okay, I'm missing a lot here. I'm missing the middle of this one and the middle of this one, that blend, that transition from the dark to like a little bit of that lighter dark, and then so on, and so on, right? So we miss that. We don't really want this. Unless you have a high contrast image, that's the only time when you're really gonna see this jump. But when creating value, you really wanna make sure you're hitting all the values. So after you get this in here, you can just take your finger, like I said, or a Q-tip, cotton ball, paper towel, and you can just smudge it. And there you go. Value scales.